Thanks so much for joining me, everyone. Oh, great. Quite a few on here on Zoom now. Fantastic. Well, I'm glad I waited those extra minutes then. So, hello, and thanks so much for coming. My name's Anna Lagrange. For anyone who doesn't know me, I am a lactation consultant. My background is in paediatric nursing. I've been doing that for 20 years or so. I still do a little bit of that now. And actually, lactation support, breastfeeding support is very much to do with, is connected to my paediatric nursing. But I've been interested specifically ever since becoming an IBCLC in 2015 about the mind-body connection and how we can add that, our knowledge of that, and our knowledge that's ever growing in the West about mindfulness, about the power of our brains, and how that can impact our experience as human beings, but specifically how it can impact families that I work with. And over the last couple of years, I've been teaching a range of tools and techniques that I've put together, which I call collectively mindful breastfeeding tools, to others who also have a belief and an interest in how well these tools may work for families that they work with. I haven't done an exact count up recently, but I think we're on around 200, but I've been saying that for a few months now, so I think it must be creeping up towards 250 possibly with the new courses that have just started. So I'm thrilled that people are finding these tools and techniques so useful. And what people are feeding back to me at the moment, and interestingly, especially people who've trained with me at the beginning, so perhaps a couple of years ago, they said that now more than ever they're using these tools and techniques in during the pandemic for the breastfeeding support that they are giving, and I couldn't agree with that more. I'm sure you and I certainly have been feeling really having a new awareness of mental health, of my own mental health, of my own mental well-being over this time, and what affects me and how it affects me. And for any of you who already work with families, or perhaps you're a new family yourself, the impact of this pandemic, I think, has been particularly tough for new families. And, we absolutely have a place where we can help with that, and not just the practical side of breastfeeding. So I wanted to do a talk tonight. I'm starting a new course next week, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. But first of all, I wanted to talk to anybody who's keen on thinking about how we can create, adapt breastfeeding services so they fit into not only right now in the pandemic, but also, looking for future wise, whatever that means, whatever that might look like, but also thinking about building up services and working in a way that suits us, that works for us in the pandemic, because it's not just difficult for new families, it's really difficult for us as well, whatever your circumstances might be. It's been a really tricky time. So I think we really need to create, especially those of us who are working for ourselves, and I'm sure there might be people on the call or watching this on Facebook who are health professionals and working for the NHS, so you've got less flexibility, I understand that. But for those of us who do have choices and options, I want in this call to really encourage you to think outside of the box and think about doing things differently, because actually that is what families need from us right now. And it's what they need from their health service as well, actually. But changing things in our health services is not as easy, but still really important. And I'm thrilled again that those people who have done mindful breastfeeding training are using them and taking the tools and techniques into their NHS areas. Okay, I've got a little presentation just so I can remind myself more than anything about all the things I wanted to talk about tonight. I'm just going to share that now. Computer's very slow, so sorry about this, guys. Okay. Those of you on Zoom, would you just be able to, one of you, just give me a little hand up or a little yes to tell me that you can see that presentation? Would that be right? Wonderful. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you. Okay, great. So I've called this a new era in breastfeeding support, which when I made the title, I was like, oh, sounds a bit dramatic. But you know, we do need a new era in lots of things. We are in a new era. We do need to look at things differently, and breastfeeding support is absolutely one of those things. And in some ways, I sort of think, oh, you know, well, breastfeeding, you know, support doesn't need to change, or you know, the information, the practical side of breastfeeding doesn't change. Of course it doesn't, you know, it stays the same. But I think we need to add new things into our services that really meets the needs of parents where they're at now. And let's face it, we're all in a place where we've never really been before. So I definitely do think we need a new era. And also I think there's a huge gap. There's a huge gap for new parents right now. They're not getting the face-to-face support from health professionals and other people in there who would have normally seen them. And for those of us who've worked in the services and worked, you know, in the birth world or with new parents for a long time, we've been able to see the gradual change in that anyway here in the UK. But what we're feeling more than ever right now is that there are these huge gaping holes, and families are really struggling with that. And there's a real place for us, those who can be more flexible, can be more adaptable with what we give, to go and fill up some of those gaps. Of course, we can't replace healthcare professionals. I'm not suggesting that, but I think there's a lot to be said for the breastfeeding support that we can give, even from a very simple level of, you know, being a peer supporter or breastfeeding supporter, where just that reassurance, just that aspect of community, even if it's online, just that sort of basic education in what is normal for breastfeeding, what is normal for a new baby, you know, what to expect for pregnant families is really, really vital. And I really hope that I can encourage you and inspire you, if you're not already doing breastfeeding support, to get started. So what sort of things are families experiencing right now? So definitely all of us are experiencing heightened stress and anxiety. And although I'm sure many of us have, you know, found coping mechanisms, certainly for me, I have been very up and down with it, and I think lots of other people have said the same, that, you know, I'll be feeling quite positive about things one week and then everything will change, and you know, you feel suddenly again, oh yeah, we are in this sort of strange time where there's lots to think about, lots to make, lots of decisions to make, and lots of things that we still can't do. We're not in normal life at the moment, are we? So that's stressful and it's anxiety making, and for new families even more so, I think. There's this uncertainty about the future. We can't really plan ahead or think ahead particularly, and this is absolutely the same with businesses as well. It's really hard to plan ahead, I think, in lots of ways, in a kind of, perhaps we call about a fixed mindset of things being done a certain way. We have absolutely all, and this is every industry, every job, everything we do, we've all got to think differently so that we can, you know, provide the services that we provide. Families have got this information overwhelm. So what I'm discovering a lot of families are doing is they're going online more than ever and looking up what to do. The other thing is they're actually relating to their health professionals a lot over the telephone. So they're not perhaps getting that in-depth, holistic, thorough assessment and communication from health professionals that they were before, so they feel a bit lost with the information they've got and they're feeling overwhelmed by everything. On top of that, things like in antenatal care and, you know, in the labour wards and things like that, is the guidelines have been changing constantly throughout this whole pandemic, and they've been different everywhere, and that's quite exhausting and tiring for families to try and navigate, as well as trying to navigate their own sort of maternity care. There's been a reduction in perinatal services, so particularly postnatal, but also antenatally, perhaps they would have had to attend appointments separate, you know, with just the pregnant parent going and not their partner. All sorts of things have been happening because of the pandemic, which can be really difficult. And I think as well, with this sort of lead up to having a baby, they may have been really isolated and had some really tricky times. They've had to navigate things on their own, and then they kind of think, well, when the baby's here, everything's going to be all right. But actually, perhaps things have continued to be difficult because they haven't had the support they need. Definitely a lack of face-to-face support. And then we've got all the other challenges of being a new parent or a parent to be, which are just, you know, the everyday challenges. So just a reminder what some of those might be, and some of the reasons we might see stress and anxiety in new families normally. And they may have had a traumatic birth, and that's thinking obviously particularly postnatally, but also if we're looking after, if we're educating, if we're supporting those in pregnancy, that could be their history. They might have had a really difficult birth with their previous children, so that might be something they're dealing with. And again, if you've had a traumatic birth, you've had a difficult experience before, if you're having to do some of those appointments and some of that stuff on your own, that can be really, really hard. If you're somebody who has had previous miscarriages, for example, and then you're having to attend scans on your own, that's going to be really, really potentially triggering thing for you to do. And then new parents are exhausted, aren't they? Breastfeeding might be difficult, they might be having challenges, they might be in pain. Their expectations of parenthood might be, might have been completely different to what they're experiencing. That's certainly what happened to me with my first baby. Despite working with new families myself for many years, it was still a big shock when my son came along. So, that's something that's quite tricky to deal with in the beginning for many families, isn't it? We've already talked about information overwhelm. As I said, I think that's happening. I think that's occurring more than ever at the moment. Perfectionism, we want to be the best parent we can, and sometimes, when we feel like we're not meeting our own expectations, or perhaps even the expectations of others around us or society, it can feel really hard, and we can really beat ourselves up around that. Parents often feel out of control, they feel a lack of power, and my goodness, have we all felt that over these last 7 months or so. Families are probably really missing their families and friends. If their family's living away, perhaps they've got relatives who are shielding or are elderly, or just, they're not able to see family members as much as usual. That's something that perhaps they're really, really struggling with now. And one of the biggest things I've seen as I've been working through the last 6 months with new parents is this loneliness. They feel really isolated, and sometimes they feel isolated in a couple, but often if their partner is doing something that is a key worker job, or lots of people are extra busy at the moment, aren't they? I'm finding that the parent at home with the baby is feeling extra lonely and isolated. I don't know if that's something that you have all found as well, but that's really struck me, especially recently, how tough this is for some of these parents who are at home with the baby, especially when things are challenging. So ongoing support is so important to families at the moment, really, really, really important. And they haven't really been in it. And I don't want to generalize here, because I know that I've spoken about this on Instagram over the months, and I've had quite a few people, health professionals, feel quite upset. But my take on it is that, that I'm cross with midwives or health visitors, that their services are reduced. And of course, it's never an individual's practitioner's fault that their services are altered. My breastfeeding services are altered. I think it's about thinking about how can we make sure families get the support they need despite the restrictions that we have to put in because of COVID. It's not saying that we should all just run everything normally. Of course, things have to be put in, but I do think there needs to be some out of the box thinking so that we can support these families. And it absolutely lots of things to think about with that. So as far as running a breastfeeding service, whether it's an antenatal class, whether it's postnatal classes, or whether it's a mixture of both, these are the things, three main things I think we need to think about at the moment. So the first thing we need to think about is we need to be flexible, and we need to be able to change the services we're giving moment to moment almost, so that we can meet whatever's going on in our area at that time. So we need to, perhaps if we teach in a space, we need to find a COVID-friendly venue. Perhaps when we're looking forward to next year, we need to think about, could we teach some of these classes? What parts of this could we perhaps do outside? And I think we always need to have an online option so that we can quickly pop our service online if we want to, and it's really useful to have that set up and running in the background. I do know that although it's not the same, parents do tell me they get a lot from online groups. I personally know that I still have sort of good long sessions with people, sometimes an hour to 2 hours on my breastfeeding support sessions, and they work really well online. And I know it isn't quite the same as seeing people face to face, but it's a safe way of doing it, and it's still a way that I can really spend some one-to-one time with them. We also need to think about our own family, which is so important, especially when we're working for our own service. And again, if you're working for NHS, this is much harder to do, but we need to create service which is sustainable. Sorry, spelling mistake there. For us, we need to be able to make sure it works for our family, that it's something that serves us. We don't necessarily want to just copy the services that are already out there. We want to think about creating a business that works for us. So for me, I mean, I went into breastfeeding work because I wanted to spend more time with my family. I wanted the flexibility to be able to just go to one of my kids' sports days, or to be able to book stuff around what works for them around the school run and things like that. So it's really thinking about what it is you want about the work you're doing, and then also thinking about what works for your family during COVID. So whether you have got children or you haven't got children, you may have family commitments anyway that you want to work around. You may have somebody that you suddenly have to drop everything and go and look after. You may have to suddenly self-isolate. That can happen to any of us, couldn't it? We could have the call from Track and Trace here in the UK, or maybe one of our family members is poorly and we've got to self-isolate for 2 weeks. So we've really got to think about how we can put policies and plans in place in case all that stuff happens. And we also need to be able to communicate that to the people who are booking onto our services. So having some kind of policy where people are clear that you might have to cancel last minute, but if you do, perhaps you will say you're going to redo it online, or you're going to refund people, or just making it really clear so that when people book with your service, they are very, very clear about exactly what they're going to get. One of the reasons why people may not be booking at the moment is because they just feel like everything's so uncertain. So it's just giving people that assurity that if I have to go into self-isolation, or if you have to go into self-isolation, this is how we're going to have that. This is how it's going to work, and just communicating those points. It's also really important on a broader scale, like I said, to plan a business model around what you're doing for others. And I think I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute, actually. And then the third thing, which is so important right now, and this is where mindful breastfeeding comes in, is we need to prioritize mental well-being to help us and our clients towards a calmer, more positive and a connected place of being. It's really hard at the moment to not let stress and overwhelm be a part of our lives. So even, I'm a meditation teacher. I use all of these tools myself, the ones that I teach to the people who train with me, and I've had to really ramp them up over the last few months and do them a lot more, because just doing them, once a day or whatever, just wasn't doing it. So I had to increase the tools I knew worked for me. And I think we need to be adding all of this stuff into breastfeeding services, because if we're going to go support a family and they're so stressed out and so anxious that they can't even really take on what we're saying, or really listen or connect with their baby, it makes everything much, much harder. And those people who are already working in mindful breastfeeding will tell you that if we focus on connection first and calming down the nervous system, everything else becomes much, much easier. So these are some of the ways that we make our business more flexible with the Mindful Breastfeeding School. And, you can use these for anything really. So all of the classes that I talk about and we plan and we teach can be done face-to-face, outside or online. Look, in the UK, we're going into winter now. It's been absolutely tipping it down today. I don't think I'd be really wanting to run a class in the rain, but you know what? Maybe in the woods you could. Maybe if you had a woodland nearby that you could go and use, maybe you could do a walking postnatal or antenatal group. What do they say? I can't remember what the phrase is now. It's like about like there's no bad weather, just bad choice in clothes, or something like that. Kind of forest school quote. So, it depends on the kind of person you are, but certainly I think as we're heading into spring, or for those of you who might be in the southern hemisphere and you've got your nice weather coming, or your nice weather already here, absolutely we can think about teaching, supporting out in the open air where it's more of a COVID safe environment. Just opening up the chat box quickly. Sorry, my computer's so slow. I might have to come back to questions at the end. Sorry, guys. Here's a little picture about mindful breastfeeding classes being outside. Hopefully it was somebody telling me the right quote for the forest school. Let me try and open the chat box one more time. I don't know why it's not working. Okay. So yeah, that's my example around that really. So what about creating a service that works for you? So I really encourage everybody who trains me, but I encourage you to do this as well. Really ask yourself what would work for your family. When I started up my own business and I wanted to support families, I just wanted to do it all and do everything as much as I can. And as soon as anybody said to me, "Can you help me?" I said yes. And really what my family's needs were became secondary to start with, because I was just so keen to help people with their breastfeeding. I soon discovered this was a recipe for burnout, and also not great for my marriage, or for doing things I want to do with my kids. And I started putting in boundaries in my work. And so now when I'm working with people and I'm training people, I really encourage them to do that right from the beginning and really think about what would an ideal business, what would an ideal week look for you? How much do you want to work? How much do you need to work? How much money do you need to make? How can you make that money? Become really intentional about something that is going to work for you, and specifically work for you potentially around this time of COVID when things are quite uncertain. What policies can you put in place to ensure you and your clients are clear on how things will run during changeable times? And I've got a workbook for this for you to help you work through, so you can think about what you might want to set up as far as services and hours and all that kind of stuff is. So I'm going to, for those of you who signed up for this on a email, I will be sending that to you. If anybody's watching on Facebook, I'm going to I'll pop it in the link below when we're all finished. And then finally, that creating a service that prioritizes mental well-being. So we put mental well-being at the heart of our services that we run. Practitioners who do mindful breastfeeding pick and choose which tools work, which they enjoy, and which ones they think their clients are going to use, and they use different ones all the time. Some people use set ones, for example, when they're doing antenatal classes. Mindful breastfeeding prioritizes connection, and I absolutely, in times of stress and worry and overwhelm, connection is so important, isn't it? Being connected to our loved ones. And we know connection between parents and babies is absolutely vital, and it goes really, really, it's really important for breastfeeding, but of course important however you feed your baby. At Mindful Breastfeeding School, the mindful breastfeeding tools and techniques go hand in hand with good quality breastfeeding support as well. So these are the ways in mindful breastfeeding classes and sessions that we help families with their mental well-being. So we actually focus very much on helping them calm down their nervous system. To do that, we use breathing techniques, guided relaxations. We talk a lot about self-care. We use self-care techniques like journaling and writing affirmations, and generally, creating safe spaces for people to be able to talk about their feelings around feeding, whether that's antenatally or postnatally. And we also help families to prioritize connection, and that's before and after the birth. We teach about the brain-body connection and the neuroscience, not just the practicalities of breastfeeding. And I'm just going to mention briefly, I hope that was helpful for everybody. I just wanted to let you know, I'm going to just talk about the course now, but I know not everybody here is not already working in breastfeeding. So I just wanted to let you know, if you are interested in doing some mindful breastfeeding training, there's 3 different options. So I have a free course, which is just a very short mini course, just a few videos of me chatting like this with a couple of printouts, little worksheets for you to work through. And I will put a link to that in the email that I send you. So that's a good first step. If you're not sure if you want to do mindful breastfeeding training, but you'd like to know a bit more than what I'm able to tell you on this call, then you're very welcome to go and do the free course. I also do a short course. So the short course is for people who already have a breastfeeding qualification. So that's people who have got their peer supporters, breastfeeding counsellors, health professional who have got BFI friendly training. I have people from all over the world come on this course. So if you've got breastfeeding qualification or training that I haven't mentioned there because you are from a different part of the world, just pop me an email and I'm happy to look into it. What I'm going to talk about now is the 12-week course. The 12-week course is for people who do not have a breastfeeding qualification right now. So you may already be working with new parents, or you may not be. You may want to be starting. You're really, enthusiastic to help with breastfeeding in your community. So I'm just going to run over that course now, because the next one I have got is starting next week. So the 12-week course is an online course. To do it, you don't need to have breastfed your own baby. I have a huge belief that breastfeeding support is for everybody. It's for everybody and anybody who works with new and expectant parents. I think that a basic knowledge, good quality, realistic, up-to-date breastfeeding knowledge and education should be available to everybody and from every source of support they get throughout their pregnancy and their early parenthood experiences. So I just ask that you have a passion for supporting expectant and breastfeeding families. And I also, it's a breastfeeding supporter course. It's the level of a peer supporter, but I don't call it peer supporter course because, as I said, you don't have to have had your own baby or had your own breastfeeding experience. But you also become a mindful breastfeeding practitioner as well. So you get both titles in one. It's an accredited course. It's accredited with the Thinktree Hub to do amazing courses in health and well-being. And it's a 12-week course. Some people take a little bit longer over it, but if you want to get the study done and be qualified and trained, then it takes around 3 months. It's going to be just over because we have a little break over Christmas for this course. As far as I know, this is the only breastfeeding education course that includes a brain-body connection and breastfeeding together and gives you mindfulness and positivity tools for supporting mental well-being and breastfeeding. So this is just a small snippet of what we learn on the course. I haven't got time to go into everything. But we talk about, all the basics, how breastfeeding works, how to help a family get a really good position and latch that helps them to have a comfortable breastfeeding experience. We talk about all the common breastfeeding problems, how we can troubleshoot them. We do modular on listening skills, and I have counsellor Louise Allen who comes and teaches you that. We talk about how to get the best quality resources to share with families so that they're not having that huge information overwhelm. They're given the right information from a really good source specifically about the issue that they're having. We talk about breastfeeding neuroscience. We talk about how mindset and neuroplasticity relates to breastfeeding. So that's about how we can adapt and mold our minds, how we can effectively alter our intelligence actually, and it's about how we learn as well. And we talk about the neuroscience of learning and how as human beings we learn to breastfeed. We talk about mindfulness, how we can use positive psychology techniques to help with breastfeeding. And I also support you to think about the kind of mindful breastfeeding classes and services you would like to run, how to set up a business, how to market your business, and all that kind of stuff. The course is a mixture of live interactive sessions. We have 2 of those, and then we also have live masterclasses, of which there's 5. And we also have the other weeks, which is 7 of the weeks we have pre-recorded material that you work through at your own pace. We have a group for daily guidance from me, group discussion, support from the rest of your cohort. The training courses that I do, everybody gets to know each other really well. Everybody supports each other. We have a buddy system. Even though it's online, we do all get to know each other pretty well. And that community aspect of the training is really, really important to me. You get all the resources you need to get started straight away. So all the MP3s to share with your clients. You get PDFs of everything you read out. You get teaching plans. Although, just to put a note on that, is I do recommend some courses that you can run, but actually with mindful breastfeeding, you can add it into the service in whichever way you want to, or however it fits into your own community, into the work you're doing already, whether if you're a health professional or if you're a birth worker, whatever you're doing, you can fit mindful breastfeeding in. But I also have learned that people really like some options for services that they can run as well. You get ongoing teaching and supervision from me as a mindful breastfeeding supporter. So that is after the course is finished. I don't just dump you. I carry on supporting you throughout your whole time providing breastfeeding support. And I've got a community of people who support me in that as well. And then part of the mindful breastfeeding, so part of the mindful breastfeeding community, as I said, and there's no ongoing fees for that. That's just something you get as part of what you paid for doing the course. The sorts of things that people do with this qualification are they might run breastfeeding antenatal classes and sessions. So the tools are useful not just for people who are breastfeeding, but also for breastfeeding education as well. I'd say probably about 2/3 of the people who come onto my courses are providing antenatal education already, and they want to add the mindful breastfeeding to what they're already doing. Some people will do pregnancy relaxation. They might run breastfeeding groups. We run a postnatal course. We've got the Mindful Breastfeeding New Parents course, which is a 6-week course that new parents can book onto. It's a really nice, supportive 6-week course where you give breastfeeding support, but also a little bit of sort of like new parent coaching as well. It's lovely. Some people will just use the Mindful Breastfeeding to support their own online community, and some people will use it for one-to-one breastfeeding support. To be honest, the sky's the limit with this stuff. People use it in all kinds of different ways. I love hearing about ways that people have come up with, ideas that they have come up with to use mindful breastfeeding. As I said before, I really like to encourage you to think about that you can run these courses in different settings, online, outside, or face-to-face in a COVID-friendly environment at the moment. Just to give you a rough idea, because people always ask me that, they sort of say, you know, what could I possibly make doing this as a business? So per month, if you were to run one antenatal class, so that would be 3 sessions of antenatal courses. And the reason there's such a wide range of charges that you could make to families is because what somebody might charge, for example, outside of London is going to be different to central London, it's going to be different to, you know, the home county. So it really varies around the country how much people charge. So that's why there's the range there. And then there's the 6-week new parent course, which you charge £60 to £150 per person. So if you were just to run one of those per month with 4 to 6 people in each one, you'd be making between £550 and £1,620 a month. But obviously, for example, the antenatal course, you might be able to run more than one a month. It really depends on what you want to do, how much work you want to do, and yeah, how much marketing and how much free time you have, and what is also you know, what people want in your local community. Bookings are open for the course. As I said, it starts next week. It starts next Wednesday, the 21st. The course is about half full. I do limit numbers. 25 is an absolute maximum. If you want to know more, you can book a call with me. I'm taking calls for Thursday. Again, I'll put a link. I've got to remember all these links, haven't I? I'll put a link to that in the email, but also on anyone who's watching on Facebook. And the checkout's going to close on Thursday night. The course is £749. There's also a payment plan option over 6 months. I've been asked this over and over again, and so this time I wanted to put in an extra option for people who would like a bit more support. So there's lots of coaching and support and calls over the whole course. So I don't want anybody who takes a standard option to feel like they're missing out. You're not. But people often who are starting up a new business or wanted to change their business would really like that extra bit of coaching support. So I've popped an extra VIP level of training for those people who would like that. So you get one-to-one coaching and support from me throughout and after the course. I've already got 2 spaces are gone, so I've got 3 spaces left with the coaching option. You have a one-to-one coaching session with me worth £450. We also have monthly VIP group coaching sessions worth £150. I've put together these amazing gift packs, which I'm very, very excited about. And I also share with you Kate Hamilton's bullet journaling course, because I think it's absolutely incredible and quite life-changing for me as a business owner. So all of that together with the training itself, with the actual course, is £1,110, or you can pay £185 a month for 6 months as another option. So that is it. That is the course that's starting next week. Oh, here we go. Here's some questions. I can see that. Okay, there's no such thing as bad weather, only the wrong clothing. That's it. Okay, Victoria. Oh yeah, Victoria, you're not watching. You're probably watching the replay, hopefully, but that's absolutely fine. Totally understand this is bedtime for lots of people. Okay, I am going to just have a little check on Facebook to see if there's any questions. If there's any questions in Zoom, please do ask me, or just comment. Really, I'd love to know your thoughts on how you're feeling about just how you're feeling about running services this time. Is there anything that's worrying you? Is there anything that's putting you off running services? What's your experience? No worries, Sarah. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. Oh, there's some comments on Facebook. Oops, can hear myself. Oh, Emma's just saying hello. That's nice. Hi, Emma. And she's saying, yep, she needs to change her plans and be more flexible. Hi, Zara, if you're still watching. Everyone's missing their families. I know, it's so hard. It's really very hard. And Adele's saying being intentional is a change that I need to make. So many of us, and I think I know exactly what Adele's talking about here, so many of us we're so passionate about working with new families. We absolutely love the work we do. And it can be really, really easy to just, because we want to help as many people as possible, it can be really easy to just drop everything as soon as a family needs our help. And I think particularly if you are from the volunteer sector, for example, I don't know why I'm saying that, but that's something that I've found working in breastfeeding support. If we're from the volunteer sector, but also from the NHS, we really we definitely want to be there for families as much as we can, provide as much support as we can. So but it's really important. I see so many people leaving this work or not feeling like they can carry on because they're completely burnt out. So yeah, it's really important that we remember the reason why we're doing this work, which is often for flexibility for our families and for ourselves, but also we're no good to anybody if we're burnt out and exhausted. So it's really important that we do put those boundaries in and set the intentions when we're setting up our services so that they work for us. And sometimes you try something that didn't work. So an example is I did a few years ago, I did some pregnancy relaxation classes where we did mindful breastfeeding type stuff. They were really, really lovely, but we had them as drop-in. And so some weeks loads of people would come, and in some weeks only one person would come. And it took me away from my family for the evening, so I couldn't do bedtime. And it was a lot to set up, and then obviously perhaps we'd only make enough money just to cover the venue and not actually make any money. So I was effectively sort of working free, and I started to feel a bit resentful, or a bit like it was a bit of a chore to go in case nobody turned up, and realized that just wasn't the way to run that service. And that's why with the postnatal new parents group, I suggest, and this is how I ran it, was that you do a 6-week block. Everybody pays for that 6-week block, so you've got the lump sum of money. You can pay for your venue if you're doing it online. You know how much income you've got, and then if people can't make it, they can't make it, but that's how much it costs. And it's just a much more sustainable way of doing it. It also means that the people who come along are really committed. They've paid the money, so they're committed to come along and be part of that group. And it's just saying, if we had to adjust and move a mindful breastfeeding service to online as opposed to face-to-face, how much money could we deduct, or don't we? So confusing. Ooh, and yeah, that's a tricky one. I mean, I think it's entirely up to you. I personally don't feel that we do need to deduct much money. I think it depends. For example, if you say you have got a venue and you're still going to have to pay for the venue, and then you're going to move a class online, I absolutely don't think you should be reducing your prices, because you might still have that overhead or that cost. But if you decide that you're going to run a course online anyway, no matter what, you may want to adjust the cost accordingly. It's really interesting because at the beginning, I dropped the cost of my breastfeeding services significantly because I saw others doing the same, and it felt like the right thing to do in the beginning of the pandemic, because there was just a lot of stress around and a lot of parents really needing help, and I wanted to open my services up to more people. But I soon realized that I didn't really need to do that. I had an online price already, and I could have just kept it. So I would encourage you to just, people are getting your time, they're getting your value. They're not having to leave their own house, which can sometimes be quite nice. So I would encourage you not to drop your prices too much or make it too cheap, because what we provide in a mindful breastfeeding session is really quite special, as you know. So but I'm happy to have a chat directly with you about it if you'd like to. I know you are in Germany at the moment, so again, I don't really know what things are like over there culturally as far as people paying for classes and things are concerned. But if it feels, with your question, it makes me feel like maybe you're not feeling that you're not sure if you want to reduce your prices, and if that's your feeling, then I would say you don't need to, personally. Has anybody else got any other questions before we go? Really nice to see so many of you on here. Yeah, exactly. Good. I'm glad you agree with me, Anya. I don't think people who, you know, we had a big service that we paid for my daughter, that was then split into different parts, and most of it was online, and we still carried on paying the same amount. And I didn't expect a drop in the price at all, because I was still getting that specialist's time and attention, and that one-to-one, you know, that one-to-one time. So it was absolutely felt fine to me to still pay the price I was paying. In fact, I was quite glad that I didn't have to pay the petrol to get there. Okay, I think that is everything. Okay. All right, with no other questions, I'm going to go. I'm going to try and remember all those links and workbooks and bits and pieces I said I was going to add to the email. If you're watching this on a replay, the things I've talked about will be in the email, and I will add them on Facebook as well. It's been so nice chatting to you all this evening. Really, really enjoyed it. And if any of you want to ask any questions about the course, then you're very welcome to book one of the calls with me on Thursday, or you can just pop me an email. I'm always happy to read emails and reply. I will reply to them as soon as I can about the courses or about anything else. All right, guys, have a lovely evening. Bye everyone on Facebook as well, and I will see you soon.